Joining us exclusively is Saudi Prince Turki al-Faisal to discuss the latest on Palestinian recognition and also the two-state solution. Your Excellency, thank you so much for your time and thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be with you. Thank you for having me.
Absolute pleasure. During the UN conference led by Saudi Arabia, we witnessed global governments recognizing a Palestinian state. How do you assess this response?
Well, it's a welcome response after 70 years of attempts to do that. And I'd say it's about time. And finally, most of the world, at least, recognizes the Palestinian state. And that is an accomplishment that we've been dreaming of for some time.
But some analysts say recognizing a Palestinian state is symbolic and has no effect on the ground when it comes to the people in Gaza. How will this initiative change the ongoing war between Israel and Hamas, and how will it change things in general?
I believe it will have an important effect on the way that the countries follow up on this recognition, because now there is a defined entity with borders that are negotiable, but land that belongs to Palestine. And depending on how the countries who recognize the Palestinian state continue in their support for Palestine by opposing the Israeli encroachment on Palestinian territory, what I call colonies, there will be substantial ramifications for that, because it means that the countries who recognize Palestine can take action to affect Israel's position on these policies that they pursue there.
And Your Excellency, let's touch a little bit on that because, you know, in response to the recognition of a Palestinian state by many countries, it's infuriated Israel and Benjamin Netanyahu, and he hit back. And a lot of their response, they say, is to now annex the West Bank, which is raising lots of concern. What do you make of this response by Israel and the possible annexation of the West Bank and what it will mean for the two-state solution?
The Israelis have been stealing Palestinian land since they occupied it more than 60 years ago. And that is a declared policy of Israel. And just recently, we heard from Mr. Netanyahu that he will not allow a Palestinian state to come into being. So there is a virtual takeover of all of Palestine and not just Gaza or bits of the West Bank. So that is what we are facing with. And that's what I meant by the countries that have recognized Palestine now need to follow up by protecting the sovereignty and the independence of the Palestinian state that they have recognized.
And Netanyahu did not hesitate to describe the decisions to recognize a Palestinian state as a reward for Hamas. How do you respond to this?
You know, that is a canard that the Israelis and unfortunately even their American allies are now promoting, because the thing that rewards Hamas is the oppression of the Palestinian people by Israel. Hamas as a movement that resists the occupation acquires popularity among the people of Palestine because the Israelis oppress them and deny them their rights. So that is the big reward that Hamas gets. It's from Israeli actions, not from the recognition of the Palestinian state.
But President Trump also said we have to get all 20 hostages back now and stop the Gaza war immediately. Without extra US pressure on Israel, is it possible to end the war or come to some sort of ceasefire?
I cannot see anybody pressuring Israel other than the United States. And that is something that now the France and Saudi Arabia, who are leading this effort to get recognition of the Palestinian state by the world, they have to follow up with the United States. And we saw recently, just yesterday or the day or today, the meeting between Monsieur Macron and Mr. Trump, in which Mr. Macron explained in public the Saudi-French joint effort to end the fighting and completely bring peace to Palestine and the rest of us in the area. So this is the effort now for not just Saudi Arabia and France, but all these countries that have recognized Palestine as a state.
So do you think Donald Trump is the only man who has the capability to pressure Israel and stop them when it comes to the occupation of Gaza City and the bombardment and the annexation of the West Bank?
Absolutely. He is the one I hear from newspaper accounts and from media experts, even Israeli media experts. They say that Mr. Trump is more popular in Israel than Mr. Netanyahu. So he is the only one, I think, who can put the pressure and the squeeze on Israel to make it stop its genocidal war on the Palestinians.
And we have seen a near consensus, actually, regarding Hamas, especially among Western countries that have recognized the state of Palestine, where there appears to be a conditionality that Hamas has no future within any Palestinian state. How do you view this?
Well, that is something that was dealt with by the Saudi-French communique that came out about recognizing the Palestinian state and going forward to a peaceful settlement between Palestine and Israel. The wording of that statement takes into account that Hamas must give up its weaponry and arms and basically remove itself from the political equation. I think that can be done if Hamas is agreeable to it, through their joining the PLO. As you know, Hamas has been keeping its, it wants its cake and wants to eat it too. They are very reluctant to declare their full acceptance of the Arab Peace Initiative, which guarantees that there will be a peaceful settlement in this conflict. So that is what has to be done now if the Hamas recognizes that the Palestinian state must come into being.
And do you think that they could join forces with the PLO and that could be successful? Because one thing Israel has said, and many people from Israel who have spoken to me say the main plan is to completely eradicate Hamas and make sure they have no place in the future government inside Palestine. So is it possible that these two could join forces? How could this practically be done if Israel's plan is to eradicate the group?
Well, they've been trying to eradicate Hamas now for 2.5 years and haven't been successful in that. I don't see how they can have the ambition that they can eradicate Hamas. And so it is for them to negotiate with the PLO and the Palestinian Authority on how the parameters and the conditions of the new state are to be. If Hamas is going to be fully integrated into the PLO and become committed to the same conditions that the PLO has accepted, that is one way that Hamas will remove itself as an independent entity from Palestinian political life. That is one way of achieving the result of removing Hamas as an obstacle to a peaceful settlement between Israel and Palestine.
Your Excellency, I want to talk a little bit about negotiations that were going on in Qatar, of course, which included Hamas and Israel as they were trying to work towards some sort of agreement. And we did see Israel launch bombs in Doha at the delegation. How serious was this? And how can negotiations resume after Israel did launch these strikes on Doha?
This is the how can I put it? This is the exposure of Israel for what it is, a treacherous and an unreliable potential partner for peace in the area. They negotiate and let the Qataris negotiate a settlement for the Gaza conflict, and then they bomb the country that is negotiating this conflict. So this is par for the course for the Israelis. And I was not surprised by this because Israel has been treacherous throughout its history in the area.
Do you think that Israel is becoming more of a concern to its neighbors and Arab countries in this region?
I think it is becoming more of a concern to the Jewish community in the world. You've seen that in the demonstrations that take place, the public demonstrations that take place throughout the world, that Jewish people are joining in those demonstrations to oppose Israel's actions against the Palestinians. And many Jewish rabbis and important people have declared their opposition to the Netanyahu government conduct vis-a-vis the Palestinian people. So this is not just a danger to us, but even Jewish people consider it to be a danger to them.
And if I can just bring you back to what the plan is the day after Israel's offensive into Gaza City ends, and also the continuous bombardment of Gaza that we have seen. We haven't heard much of what happens once this is over and how the Palestinian people get their lives back to normal and their future. Do you have any idea of how that looks?
I am not privy to the talks that took place between the French and the Saudi partners in this effort to end the war and bring peace to the area. I'm sure they have in their plans definitive ideas about the day after. And if we just review the statement that came out a month ago, I think it was, or nearly that, about their idea of what peace means in the Middle East, particularly towards the Palestinians, we can see that they have a plan already to install. I think there is supposed to be some sort of council that takes over in Gaza, and the removal of the weaponry, as I mentioned, from Hamas, and then the integration of that Gaza area into the Palestinian Authority, etc. So these are things that I think the French and the Saudis have been working on, and I'm not privy to them.
And do you have any idea who would finance the rebuilding of Gaza? That's been a big question. Where would the financial input come from?
I think the financial issue should come from the world, because basically this is not just a simple question of Palestine versus Israel, but it's a worldwide issue that has been on the books since 1948. And the voting of the big countries in 1948 that created Israel should be responsible for financing the so-called day after and what goes on from there.
And also, I was just wondering, you know, the UN Commission said that there is a genocide happening within Gaza City.
Yes.
And I wonder what your thoughts are on that, because Israel said there's no genocide happening, the UN is biased. Do you believe that there is a genocide?
Absolutely. I'm not an expert on these issues, but experts themselves have said so, including some Israelis who are, quite frank about their definition of genocide, and that it applies to what the Israelis are doing to the Palestinians. So in my mind, it's a clear-cut case of genocide against the Palestinians.
But why isn't the UN doing enough to open these aid corridors to get food to the people of Gaza? This has been a big question. And yesterday we did see Donald Trump criticize the UN and say they actually don't do much. They just have talks, but nothing actually happens. Do you think the UN has been effective in helping these people and reach the people who really need it? Or what more needs to be done?
If we remove the veto of the United States from these considerations, the United Nations can do its job. Unfortunately, it's the US veto that stymies the actions of the United Nations, not just in Palestine, but in other places as well. And we see that also Russia has used the veto power vis-a-vis Ukraine, etc. So the veto is the stumbling block that prevents the UN from doing its job.
Perhaps the most notable thing that we are currently observing at the moment is that the Saudi initiative for a two-state solution has gained significant momentum, especially among Western countries. How will the kingdom build on this momentum and make sure that diplomacy wins the day?
Well, I'm sure that the leadership in the kingdom, King Salman and Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, have in mind what to follow up with on the Arab Peace Initiative that the late King Abdullah presented to the world nearly 23 years ago. And it's been an effort that has been left on the table since that time because the Israelis have not accepted it. Had they accepted it when it was first presented, we would not be in this place now.
And let's just talk a little bit about the Abraham Accords, because Donald Trump did get many countries to do normalization ties with Israel during his first term. And Donald Trump was really praised for the Abraham Accords and the normalization of ties between some Arab nations and Israel. What's the future of the Abraham Accords?
Well, you know, the kingdom is not party to the so-called Abraham Accords. And in the past, I have made public statements that my view is that so-called Abraham Accords do not deserve that name, actually, because Saudi Arabia is not yet part of them. The Prophet Abraham, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he actually came to Mecca, as you know, in his pursuit of the service to God and the establishment of the Holy Kaaba. And unless the kingdom becomes party to any future agreement that envisions the establishment of a Palestinian state and the right of self-determination for the Palestinian people and the capital in East Jerusalem, I don't consider them to be Abrahamic. Some people may disagree with me, but that is my view.
And Your Excellency, just before I let you go, what would you like the future of Palestine to look like for the people who are there? And how do you hope a resolution is reached?
That is something I think all of us hope for, peace. You know, my late father had a wish to conduct a trip to Jerusalem before he died. Unfortunately, his death preceded that event. But I, too, I have publicly said that I hope before I die that I'll be able to visit the mosque in Jerusalem. It will be a crowning achievement for humanity to finally put this conflict to end, and the Palestinian people to get their full rights as was envisioned in the initial UN resolution back in 1948. This is a desire that I wish and I hope everybody will be of equal demand for that desire.
Prince Turki al-Faisal, yes, we all hope for peace. And I want to say thank you so much for your time and thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
Pleasure.